Hello and welcome to Spotlight on Jackson County. We're talking with Marcia Hill. She's the Deputy Public Information Officer with FEMA. And it's hurricane season, folks. So we've got Marcia in here to tell you what you should be doing prior to a hurricane making it into the Gulf. If the wind's blowing, don't go get your plywood. Welcome to the show, Marcia.
Thank you. Well, you know, you and I and countless viewers of yours have been through a storm or two in our years here on the coast. If you're from the coast, if you grew up here, if you've lived here a long time, you know, you pretty much know what to do. So I'm going to really try to get this message out to your folks who haven't been here for a storm. I'm sure if you're new to the area and you've never been through any kind of tropical storm, your friends maybe have told you about it, your family. Hopefully you will never have to go through a Katrina. I'm not going to get into that, but that was a bad storm, and hopefully you won't have to go through it. But, you know, we're going to have tropical storms. We're going to have hurricanes. I mean, it's a fact of life living on the coast. And what you need to be doing now with hurricane season just starting on June 1st, this is the time to be getting ready, because June is typically your most inactive month for hurricane season. So it's a really good time to take stock of what you have and what you're going to do if we are threatened by a storm that may require you to evacuate. And that's another thing we need to stress hard, Doug, is because, you know, evacuation, they don't make these evacuation calls just because they don't have anything to do. There is a real danger. People do get complacent if they've had to evacuate a time or two before and it turned out to be for nothing. But, you know, better for nothing than
to get hurt.
So evacuation means you have to have a personal emergency supply kit, and this is the time to put it together. And I brought one along, and let me drag the little bag. Everybody who's gone through this before, they know what I'm going to pull out of here. A flashlight, and don't forget the batteries.
How about spare batteries?
The batteries in the flashlight, and have some spare batteries too. Okay? Take some hand sanitizer with you, always handy in any time. Make sure you have bottled water, several bottles of it. Make sure you have a can opener, okay? If you're opening the potted meat, if you're opening the tuna or taking it along, if it doesn't have one of these pull tops, you're going to be out of luck, because you won't have a, you know. This is a first aid kit.
Yeah.
First aid kit, which comes in handy not just during storm season. You use this all year long.
But if you use out of it, you should replenish it.
You should replenish it.
Prior to the storm.
What you use. Go ahead and get it restocked. This is a portable radio. Portable radio. You can buy these anywhere. You can go to Kmart. You can go to Walmart. You can spend as much money on them as you want or don't want, because this is a weather radio. It will give you all kinds of warning signals. Again, make sure you have extra batteries. It's so nice to have all these gadgets, and then you say, whoops.
I think I've seen a hand crank version of that too, where you can crank the radio.
Very possibly, but you know, it's great to have one of these radios. This is a MRE, and Doug being the the former military person, I have to say that after Katrina's recovery, I was spared of eating any of these. This happens to be a veggie burger with barbecue sauce. I didn't partake in any of these. I have before. They're not my favorites, so I just lived on other stuff. But anyway,
you can live off.
You can live off of these. If you have children, you might want to bring storybooks, coloring books, some kind of games to entertain the kids while you're trying to evacuate. Don't forget your evacuation guide. Don't forget your state map. And, you know, all of these should be able to get you through. The general rule is it's up to you for 72. And that means if we have a storm hit, it's going to pretty much be about 72 hours before federal help or state help or help can get to you. So you need to be prepared if you're going to stay home and have this stuff ready for you. And, you know, it's pretty much common sense. Also, if you're going to evacuate, you need to think about, you know, not only your kit, but what about your medicines? If you have folks in your family who take prescription medicine, you need to make sure those are filled. You need to have them in a waterproof bag. If you have folks who live with you, or you know folks who have disabilities, you know, they're going to need some special attention to get them out. Also, you need to think about your pets, and the pets seem to be the last, and this is a lesson learned from Katrina. If you recall the video from New Orleans that the whole country saw where the folks were forced to leave their pets behind, and a lot of them would not, and sadly many of those people died along with their pets. After Katrina, in the year after Katrina, back in October of '06, President Bush signed into law a Pet Act, and it's a long name. It's called the Federal Pets Evacuation and Transportation Standards Act. Let's just call it the Pets Act, okay? And this was an act that was authored, a bill that was authored by a Connecticut congressman and a California congressman who along with the whole world, saw that video, that heartbreaking video of people being forced to leave their animals behind as they were being taken out of New Orleans. And they were like, that should not happen. That should be the last thing people should have to worry about, is leaving their pets behind when they have nothing else. So this law that was passed in October of '06 guarantees the inclusion of companion animals in disaster plans. And states that don't comply, that refuse to include pets in evacuation plans, they won't be eligible for federal disaster recovery money. So you've got to take care of the pets or you don't get any federal money, pretty much is what the law is saying. So, regardless of how you feel about animals and companion animals, you might think it's the dumbest idea in the world that some woman is going to leave, won't leave her little poodle behind to get out. Regardless of what you think about it, it's fact. People are not going to leave their pets behind, and unfortunately some of them are going to die, and Congress realized that. So, hey, make sure you remember the pets in your evacuation plans. A Katrina lesson, Doug, that FEMA learned, no one knew what Katrina was going to do.
No. I sure did.
That storm was more than anyone could ever have imagined. It just overwhelmed all of the resources. And a valuable lesson that FEMA learned after Katrina was to be more proactive than reactive. And what that means is, if there is a storm, say, headed towards us, Mobile, New Orleans, and it looks like one of us is going to get hit, the agency will pre-position supplies in areas around the estimated target area. And what that means is they'll have water ready on the ground. They'll have tarps. They'll have blankets. They will have supplies ready for people after the storm, so that, you're not waiting so much or so long and in these long lines for supplies. Also, FEMA can get a pre-presidential disaster declaration. Usually, if you'll recall, in times past, the disaster would happen regardless of what it was. The president flies over and then makes the disaster declaration, which opens the door to federal help. This time they can get that declaration ahead of time, and that certainly lessens the time that you have to apply for federal help. So, there are a lot of valuable lessons learned from Katrina. So if if anything good came out of that storm, it was those lessons and how we can do things better and get people the assistance they need after the storm.
But we really need to stress that people need to be prepared. They need to go out and get everything they need and have it in a spot. And you can get canned goods, you can get bottled water, you can get radios, you can get batteries, and you can put them in a box, in a bag, something, but take responsibility for yourself.
Thank you, because that was my next point. Your local and your state and your federal government cannot be everything to everybody. The ultimate responsibility for your safety and your family's safety is on you.
Exactly.
Personal responsibility, we cannot stress that enough, because you've got to look out for you, and that's why we say the first 72 are up to you. Take that responsibility for at least the first 3 days, because it's probably going to take about that long to get help to you. Preparedness, it falls on all of us. Those of us who have been here long enough, we know. I know we all get complacent at times. We'll go through a season where we didn't even get threatened. We all get complacent. It's human nature. But, this is the time. This is the time to be getting ready. Like you said, don't wait until the wind's out there blowing at 100 miles an hour to get ready. Another thing you might keep in mind, this is also the time to think about getting flood insurance. Anywhere it rains, it's going to flood. It can flood. And just because you live in an area that's never flooded before does not mean that it won't flood, ever.
A lot of people learned that.
They learned that the hard way.
Because they said, well, the water only came here in Camille. I'm not going to need flood insurance. And then guess what? They had the Camille
syndrome, as we call it. Camille was a horrible storm in 1969. It killed a lot of people. It did a lot of damage, and You're right. So many people said, nothing can be worse than Camille.
Oh, it was.
Well, now it's like Camille who, what, So anyway, once again, flooding can occur anywhere at any time. And if you get flood insurance, you can get it for homeowners, if you're a renter, if you have a condo, your business, and it just depends on how much you want to get, how much coverage you want to get. That will determine your cost. The average flood policy costs about $540 a year. It's pretty cheap protection. But you need to get it before a storm gets into the Gulf. I need to emphasize that too, because it takes like 30 days for it to become effective. Say you went and bought some flood insurance this afternoon, it would be July 30th before it became effective. If it's in the Gulf, the insurance agent is not allowed to sell you that policy, so it won't do you any good.
Of course not.
If the
There's
storm
a big
hits.
risk there.
That's right. So now, when there's nothing going on out in the Gulf, and I'm very grateful that little disturbance down there fizzled out and did nothing.
And me both.
Now is the time, and that little disturbance should raise the flag. Hey, the waters down there are warm. It's been hot so far. Maybe I should go see about getting some insurance. And this is the great time to do it, because it will take 30 days. And you can get it, like I said, for anything, just depending on what you need will determine your cost. And you can see your insurance agent. Most of them will go ahead and sell flood insurance to you. I mean, it's a big push that we've been making since the storm, because, hey, like you said,
it's probably a good idea. Anybody living south of the interstate.
Areas flooded that had never flooded before.
And if you live north of the interstate, but you're near a body of water, probably a good idea there too.
Well, what I learned about in studying about flood insurance, it's not just based on the history. If you have a lot of development over the years, that could change, your pattern of flooding, your flood control measures, your river flow, the rainfall. There's a lot of factors that go into flooding, not just, the history. Has it flooded before? Is it going to flood again? I don't have to worry about it. Never had any flooding. Things change over time. The land changes.
But I've talked to a lot of people, and their attitudes have changed. They're like, well, this is the worst storm. We're not going to get another one like this for 500 years or something like that. Well, wrong. It was 69, and then it was Katrina. So.
And then Frederick hit in '79, and Jackson County got a lot of damage from Frederick. In 1979, we had Elena in 1985. That was a pretty bad storm. Hurricane George in 1998, I think it was. I got water from that. Then you had your little tropical storms that dumped Isidore and what those others.
Just rain events.
Just rain events. Tropical storms, when you think of a tropical storm, and some people go, oh, it's just a tropical storm, it's not going to do anything. Tropical storms can do a lot of damage, depending on how much rain they contain.
Marcia, we're going to have to take a little break right here.
Okay.
We're going to take a break. We'll be right back with more information for you on hurricanes with Marcia Hill. Welcome back to Spotlight on Jackson County. We got some very important information for you tonight, people. We're talking with Marcia Hill. She's the Deputy Public Information Officer with FEMA. It's hurricane season. We got to get prepared. In our first segment, we talked about what you can do to get prepared, but now we're going to talk about assistance that might be available in case we do have a storm. Welcome back, Marcia.
Thanks. The storms that hit us leave a lot of damage behind. They leave people homeless. They leave people in need of services. And we do have individual assistance, IA, and of course that means assistance to people and families. And you can get individual assistance in the form of housing needs. FEMA will pay for temporary housing. FEMA will pay for repairs, replacement, permanent housing construction. If you have disaster-related medical or dental costs, if you have disaster-related funeral and burial costs, if you need clothing and household items, if you need heat source, fuels, heating, oil and gas, FEMA will pay for a lot of the basic needs that people have. You can apply for assistance, and usually if you've pretty much lost everything you have and you're living in a house that has no roof, you're going to be eligible for assistance. Right now, to date, $1.3 billion has been spent in Mississippi on individual assistance. That's B billion. That's a lot of money. We had, at one time, 43,000 trailers occupied in Mississippi at the height of recovery right after the storm. A lot of people lost their homes. A lot of people had no housing. Right now, we're down to about 650 So that's a big gap in 4 years almost.
But we're still not back to where we were, though.
We are still not back to where we were, and it's, you know, I think because of this storm, it's going to take a lot more. It's going to take a long time. The coast is not going to be what it was. Hopefully it will be better, but it's going to take a long time. Public assistance on the other end of the spectrum is another type of assistance, and as it suggests, public assistance is for your fire stations, your libraries, your infrastructure, your city and your county buildings, your public utilities, and we got $3 billion obligated for that. And that's what's helping you know, build back all of the cities and counties and our drainage and sewage that we lost in the storm. We have more than 23,000 project worksheets active. And what that is, a project worksheet pretty much just outlines what the project is, what it entails, how much it's going to take to complete it, who's involved. And so we have more than 23,000 of those still active. You're going to have a lot of public assistance projects underway for the next several years to come, we've been told. So, you know, while the individual assistance is winding down with the trailers and the assistance to folks individually, the public assistance is really still cranked up. And Jackson County got $88 million just for the school system, and that includes the city and county schools, just to get your school systems back up throughout the county, because of course a lot of the schools were damaged. You can have insurance and still get assistance, you know, if your settlement's been delayed, or if it's insufficient to meet your disaster needs, if you've exhausted it, if you can't locate rental resources in the area. You know, there's a lot of variables involved in meeting the assistance requirements. But I have to tell you, with so many folks needing help after the storm, the money was there, the assistance was there. The trailers, we have about 650, as I told you, and they're being sold to the folks who live in them. You know, the deadline was May 1st, and we thought folks would be getting out. Thousands of people have been able to get back into their own homes or a more permanent home. We had always said that the trailers were not for long-term occupancy. You know, we wanted people to have a housing plan. Well, housing on the coast has not moved as fast as a lot of people thought it would, and there are still shortages in housing, especially in Hancock County and West Harrison County, and there are some in Jackson County. The prices have gone up for rentals, and you know, the housing remains a big challenge. So what FEMA decided to do is sell the trailers to the current occupants. If you're still living in a FEMA-issued trailer, you really don't have a choice, or you don't have an option, or you don't know what you're going to do yet, you might think about purchasing your trailer if it's what you need to do. Mobile homes are being sold for $5, and the park models, which are a little smaller, are being sold for $1. The travel trailers, if you'll recall, those are the real small ones, and they had the most formaldehyde in them. They are not being sold. If you've been in one of those travel trailers, I don't know why anyone would think they could live permanently in that. They're very small, and they do have a high level of formaldehyde. Now, if you buy one of the trailers, you take on that responsibility of getting insurance for it, of getting permits if required. That's going to open some zoning questions in the cities where the trailers are located. And each city along the coast has different zoning requirements. So you're going to have to deal with the zoning folks on these trailers. Relocation cost, if they require you to move it somewhere, you're going to have to do that. You know, you have to take responsibility for the trailer if you're going to buy it. And we've notified all of our folks in the trailers, explaining this to them, giving them the opportunity to purchase the trailer if they so wish to do. They have until July 16th to let their intentions be known if they're interested. If you buy a trailer before it's sold, FEMA will test it for formaldehyde, and the state accepted level is 40 parts per thousand. So you're going to get a formaldehyde test on those trailers. So, you know, it's an option. You know, if you're an elderly person and you have no other place, we are dealing with a lot of elderly and disabled folks who really didn't have a lot before the storm, and this trailer may be the only roof that they have over their head. So this is an opportunity for them.
When you really couldn't put them out on the street.
No, and
that's
FEMA has been very adamant in saying no one's going to be put on the street. We're not going to add to the homelessness problem that we have on the coast. We're not going to make more people homeless. So this is an option, and it will create some questions on zoning, but those will be dealt with individually. You know, our waterways on the coast, Doug, on a totally different subject. We live on the coast because of the beautiful and wonderful waterways we have. Well, marine debris was a huge problem after the storm. Think of all the stuff that was in the waterways.
Everything from houses went into the bayous and
houses,
waterways.
Construction materials, vehicles,
washers,
stoves,
dryers,
washers. I mean, can you imagine what, you know? But anyway, so what we did was we contracted with the Corps of Engineers, Department of Marine Resources, Coast Guard, local contractors, and in March of this year, we wrapped up a 2-year marine debris cleanup project. All the waterways in Jackson, Harrison, and Hancock counties were cleaned out, and we got 46 million cubic yards of storm debris of anything you can imagine. I saw some of the stuff that came out. It just blows your mind. 46 million cubic yards, to put that in some kind of perspective, if you've got a football field, imagine it stacked 5 miles high.
My gosh.
And remember the big mountains of debris that were like at the Sunplex Park?
I live right around the corner from there.
So you saw that every day.
Yes.
And the mountains just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger of stuff. Well, that was like land debris. The marine debris was pretty much that high too. So that program has wrapped up, and the waterways are again clear. But you know what was really frustrating, and the crews would tell us, they'd go to a waterway and clean up, and like 2 weeks later, people were throwing stuff back in the waterway, their debris. And they'd have to go back and clean it again. So we tried to get the word out about that.
So don't dump your junk in the waterways.
No dumping of your junking. You know, there's a section of FEMA that I did not know existed until I joined the agency almost 3 years ago, when they were talking about Beauvoir and repairing Beauvoir. And I asked someone, you know, as green as I was then, I was like, what's the deal with Beauvoir? FEMA is not just about recovery and response and helping people. FEMA, by law, has to assist in restoring historic sites, and I did not know that. The most visible example on the coast, of course, is Beauvoir in Biloxi. If you saw Beauvoir, you saw how sad it looked.
Oh, it was devastating.
It was devastating. It was horrible to look at. And it was badly damaged, so FEMA got involved, since it is a historic site, and contributed $15 million to help restore that house. The Presidential Library, of course, is not a historic site. It opened, I believe, in 1991, but it's on the historic property. So it, too, will be eligible for federal dollars to come back to its original state. The old Spanish fort here in Pascagoula will be getting money for repairs. There's 156 historic projects underway throughout the state. And, you know, many people just did not know that FEMA, we have a historic environmental section where we have archaeologists and historians. These people are the ones who work on these projects.
Now I'm learning something, because I didn't realize
I
that
didn't
was
know that
going on.
either, and it's just something that a lot of people, because they think of FEMA and they think of water and tarps and, you know, money for housing and response right after a storm. There's a lot more to FEMA than just the immediate response and recovery, and the Historic Environmental Department is one of those. They do a great job, and they're helping put our historic sites back together. We lost so many of our historic buildings. The beautiful homes, the beautiful museums, they're all gone. But the few that we have left, FEMA, by law, is helping to put them back together. And I think the most visible, as everyone would agree, would be Beauvoir.
Yes, and it really needed to be restored. It's the most historic place.
It's the most historic place, and look how many storms it has survived. Since it was built in the 1840s, I believe, 1850s, yes, if I know my history. And it would have just been really a really bad blow if this storm had just totally wiped it out. So I'm glad to see it's come back. I have not been there since it reopened. I had visited while it was under construction, but I haven't been since, and I understand it's just gorgeous. So.
Mr. Rick Fort has done a wonderful job in bringing that back.
I hear he has. I hear he has. An alternative housing option that's being looked at besides the trailers, when you have housing needs in a storm like we did after Katrina, trailers are usually what comes in. The alternative housing program, Mississippi Cottages, have been a big success, and you have 689 families in Jackson County living in the Mississippi Cottages. It's not a federal program, it's funded by FEMA, but the state does oversee it, and 2,800 families have moved into the cottages. And this was just another option besides trailers, you know, after the storm. I think many of you have seen them. It's those cute little pastel cottages.
Yes.
I think they're adorable, personally. You can add on to them. They're not the biggest, but if you lived in a FEMA trailer, they probably feel like a palace. And you can get the 1 bedroom, the 2 bedroom, and I think the 3 bedroom. I think the biggest one is just under 1,000 square feet. And they're just the cutest little things.
Beats a tarp in the woods.
It beats a tarp in the woods, and it beats a FEMA trailer.
We've got about 1 minute left, Marcia. What would you like to leave our viewers
I would
with?
like to leave you stressing personal responsibility. Your government, whether it's the local, state, or federal, cannot be everything to everyone. Get your disaster plan together. Get your evacuation plan together. Think about your disabled folks. Think about your pets. And think about your families. Get your kits together. Get your prescriptions together. And just be safe as you can be this hurricane season. And keep your fingers crossed that we don't get hit.
Thank you so much for being here, Marcia.
Thank
I really
you.
appreciate it.
I hope I've shared some good information with folks.
You did. Thank you for watching Spotlight on Jackson County. And remember, one life lost in a storm is far too many. Get prepared and be ready, because it may happen this year. We hope not, but it might. Thank you for watching.